I used to play this, but it took me about 3 months to learn it. I only played the first part of it. That's my YouTube crush. That's Tiffany Poon. She's a classical pianist who does a lot of vlogs. And I started binge watching her vlogs during the pandemic. And oh, she's so adorable. She's lucky that I am not a younger man. Are you listening, Tiffany? So this is Rob here, speaking to you again from my bed, laying flat on my back. It's my day off, and all I have to do is go to an employee party for one of my jobs. Because now I just fuck around doing two jobs to make less money than I made on one job. So that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, I haven't fucked up on Kratom again, although I've been really, really, really tempted. I don't know if I'm still having pause from this or what. I'm just flat. I just feel flat. Someone asked me in the comments, I actually got a comment, and he asked me for some more stories. He said, this guy said he was taking 28 grams of kratom a day. Well, see, there's two parts of the story. There's the whole part of the opioid addiction, which goes back years and years and years, 30 years or whatever. And there's the kratom part, which didn't start till 2019-ish. So I'm going to start with the kratom because the rest of it would take too long. Anyway, so I quit methadone in 2015, and I was straight for a few months. A friend of mine broke her wrist, and she got a Vicodin prescription for a while. And when she haven't done any opioids for a while, and you take a Vicodin, it's like it lights you up, and then you remember, like, wow, now I remember why I like this shit so much. It starts working again. So I ended up buying that whole Vicodin prescription. Then I got a bug up my ass. Then it's like it turned on some demon or whatever, and I decided that I had to get opioids or I had to get some kind of dope at any cost. I'm not going to say opioids anymore. I hate that fucking word. There's opiates and there's opioids. Opiates are anything directly related to opium. So there's only three. There's morphine, codeine, and another one called thebaine, which they can make other stuff out of. Opioids are stuff that are either they're like pharmaceutically tweaked versions of real opiates, or they're. So when I was probably doing about 25 grams of kratom a day. I was getting them. I'll explain how I got on kratom. Okay, so I quit the methadone clinic. Then I got on Vicodin, and then I broke a tooth. I had a tooth out, and I got a Vicodin script. And at the end of that Vicodin script, man, I remember I felt like I dropping my energy, and like I felt this little cough, and I'm like, man, am I getting sick? And then I'm like, oh, that Vicodin ran out. Like I was already starting to get sick after 20 of them. Like once you're an addict, like you get sick so much faster. Like it only takes you a couple times of using anything, and then you just get strung out again. Like not major strung out, but you'll have like a hangover effect, like more than it's not like you're a normal person where you can just take something, you know. But back before I got addicted, like I could take pills and then they would just wear off, and I wouldn't even, you know, have any problem. Now it's like even if I take one dose of something, there's this even if it's not a withdrawal, like if there's a trough, there's something that reminds me of a withdrawal. There's something. So anyway, and then about a month later, I cracked another tooth, and I got Vicodin for that. And then so after two Vicodin scripts, I was kind of on my way. And then I started hounding a friend of mine to get me some pain pills or some heroin or something. I just wanted it. And she was this woman that she smoked crack, but she didn't do painkillers. So, you know, I kept bugging her and bugging her. She didn't want to get it. I mean, she's a friend of mine. She didn't want to give it. She didn't want to get it for me. Like, she knew what my situation was. She didn't want to do it. But I kept hounding her. I kept bugging her over and over. So she ended up calling somebody who had dilaudid pills. And I thought like something like the reason I was curious about Dilaudid was because it was Elvis Presley's favorite drug, and I'd never done it before, and I thought, wow, Dilaudid, huh? Elvis's Elvis's drug. Like I gotta try that. And I figured that it was just one of those things where it was like somebody from the VA or whatever had a prescription and they're selling their script once a month, and like probably won't see this around. Like they'll all get bought up quick and then they'll be gone. So I bought one of them and I split it into quarters, and even a quarter of this thing was an 8 milligram Dilaudid. It made me feel good. It was like heroin in a pill. It was real clean and real. I liked it, and I gave some to my brother, and he liked it too. And then we called them donuts for Dilaudid. That was like our code word. Well, I'll go get a donut. And they were $30 a piece. So anyway, I started getting like every couple of days I'd get another one of these pills, and I'd split it up in quarters. And then after a few days, I'd start worrying like, oh, it would stop working, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm getting strung out, like, oh, I gotta quit, and then I'd quit for a while, and I'd go through this little mini withdrawal for like 5 or 6 days, and then right when I was about to get over it, like on the like 6, 7, it takes like 6, 7 days before it finally lets go of you, and it always somewhere around then, like before 10 days, I would always fuck up and do it again, and then I'd go through the cycle again. And I kept thinking like that these Dilaudid pills were going to run out because I couldn't imagine. I thought that a pharmaceutical product, and it looked like a real pharmaceutical product. It had all the numbers on it and everything. I looked it up in poison control and because I used to be a pharmacy tech, I have a pretty good idea what's real. And it looked like real drugs to me. It seemed like real Dilaudid. And I thought that they were going to run out like every time I bought them, but they never seemed to run out. Until finally I got the connection myself, and I started calling this guy, and it was like delivering pizza. I mean, this guy, he always had them, always had them. And I'm like, where the fuck are these things coming from? Like North Korea? Are they going out the back door to the pharmacy? Like, where are they coming from? So anyway, that whole pattern of like taking little bits of Dilaudid and then quitting, and then taking little bits and then quitting. I went off with that for like 2 or 3 years of that, and it just made me fucking miserable. And I remember, the first time I took it, I had my wisdom teeth out, and my grandparents came over, and I didn't want to get out of bed. My dad's like, "Oh, take your pain pills." So I took my pain pill, and I didn't even believe in pain pills. I didn't even know what they were. I was like 16 years old. Never done any drugs before, and I took this pill, this Vicodin, and all of a sudden I started to feel really good. I was like really talkative. I was like in a really good mood, and that's what I associated it with, just like this warm, good feeling. But anyway, after a couple of months of doing that Dilaudid, it definitely takes away your personality. I mean, when I really realized that was when there was this girl who's the pantry guy, salad maker, and I would have to give my salads to these food runners. And they always had like a 16, 18-year-old food runner, little girl. And most of them were adorable little girls. And this girl, she one day she looked at me and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "What?" Well, I had just taken my quarter of Dilaudid or whatever, and she's like, "It's like you're not happy anymore. Like you used to sing, you used to joke around, like you used to, like now you're just quiet." And then it really dawned on me, like, wow, if this 16-year-old kid can see this, like, there must be something to it. I was trying to get off this Dilaudid, and the guy finally got busted, because for a while I was just like, when the fuck is this asshole going to get busted? Like, and it just kept going on and on and on for like 2 or 3 years, like from 2016 to 18. And then finally the guy went away. Finally he got popped, like right after New Year's in 2018. And my mom had a tramadol prescription, and so I started, but she didn't take them, so she got like 90 tramadols a month for a while. So I was taking those to like keep my like minor dope sickness at bay. And like a lot of times I'd need like 3 or 4 tramadols to get through the day, and I'd take tramadol, like 4 tramadols before. I'd take one before work, one during work. I'd just like space them out throughout the day. And then I'd take Xanax and my other benzo at night to just knock myself out. And then one day I was sitting in a barber's chair and I was talking to this girl who's a crackhead, drug addict. And she pulls out of her pocket these herbal looking pills and she's like, "Oh, I just discovered these. It's called Kratom. It's like it really works." Now I had already heard of Kratom. Like when I was kicking the methadone, I was like on the phone, like looking for shit that might help. And I'd found this stuff that's called kratom. People were talking about on these posts, and I didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. I didn't know what it was. I figured it was some herbal shit that didn't work. So I never bother with it. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, this really works. Like it makes you feel good, and and it's non-addictive. And you get them at the gas station for 100 for $10 or whatever." And anytime somebody tells you a drug makes you feel better, but it's non-addictive, you got to be a little skeptical. But of course, so she gave me like four of these things, and I only took one, and I was surprised that it did something. Like it kind of made me feel like I took a codeine or something, like a codeine and a cup of coffee. And I went out and I got some. I got some capsules, and then and they really worked. I mean, I thought they were about as strong as Vicodin, maybe stronger. I mean, it was like a miracle drug. It was almost like as good as Oxy. Like it gave you kind of a really energized stimulant effect. It took away your dope craving feeling. And at first I was taking them like every 4 hours, but the more I took them, like then they stopped working, and I had to take more of them, and then they started lasting less and less. I started doing the doses closer and closer together. So anyway, this friend of mine at work saw me taking he saw the kratom pack, and he was like, "Oh, you take kratom?" It's like, that's a stupid way. That's the expensive way. Like you can get this shit online for like by the kilo, like $70 a kilo. So he already had that all set up. So I split a kilo with him, and he comes in, and he brings me these two big old huge bags of kratom. It's like moon dust. It's this fine powder. And at first I tried putting it in tea. I tried all these different ways of taking it and tried making pills myself, but it was too messy. It's really messy. It gets all over your fucking bathroom, all over. I mean, it's a mess. And But after a while, I started doing the toss and wash method, and I got totally addicted to it, man. I was going through like a 250 gram pouch about every 10 days. So I had to be doing about 25 a day. And it got to the point where I like this was my day. Like I'd wake up, like I'd feel sick as soon as I woke up, and I'd have to run in the bathroom and wash down some kratom. And I'd keep doing kratom every 2 hours. And then when I got to work, I would do some kratom. And then, when I got done with my prep and everything, and when, the main dinner hour was about to start up, I would make up little cups, styrofoam cups with kratom, and I'd stir them up, and I would have them strategically placed. Like I had these little hiding places around the restaurant in case, like, I ran out of kratom in the middle of the dinner rush, or I ran, my kratom buzz wore off, so I could always get some more. And every time I left the house, I had to have kratom on me. It's like, oh, where's my kratom? Like if I had lost my kratom, it was like I'd make a U-turn and go home. So, people say kratom's as addictive as it's only as addictive as coffee. Well, I've been addicted to coffee, but usually don't carry it around with. Oh, gotta have my coffee. It's in my back pocket. So it's definitely more addictive than coffee. So anyway, and then after a while, I just started having health problems from it. It was like it made me pee all the time. It made me like it kind of dehydrates you. Um, and then I would have these episodes where I would go through periods where I'd feel really bad. It was mostly from like I'd get constipated, and I'd take all stuff, enemas and X-Lax, and just make your stomach feel like it's gonna explode. And one time I got like pain in my kidneys. I just started feeling like I just started to like not feel good. Like I was just taking, and then I got where I couldn't sleep through the night. I would start waking up in the middle of the night, like in a panic attack. Yeah, but kratoms get kind of a stimulant effect, and it makes you pee. So, like if you take more kratom in the middle of the night, you're not going to sleep very well. So, I don't know. I've got on it, and I've relapsed on it like a bunch of times. I've quit and gone back to it, and quit and gone back to it. But the last time, a couple times I quit, I had Adderall. So when, there's like the opioid withdrawal part and then there's the fatigue part. So I could just Adderall my way through the fatigue part. But now I don't have the Adderall, so it's much, much harder. And I don't know. There seems to be some component of this thing that drags on for a long time. Like I still feel like my eyes are watering a little bit. Like when in the morning I still feel this feeling of dread, like my eyes are watering. So I've basically been off, everyday usage since before Thanksgiving. So I'm about, 6 weeks in, and I'm still having problems. So I don't know. Like, why would you want to quit kratom? I don't know. It's like I didn't want to quit for a long time, but I just got to a point where I think that being on drugs, I always thought that if you were handling it, if you were able to get through and get by and fake people off, and then you were handling it and it was okay. It was like this mentality that I got into when I started having my real jobs when I was in my I was about 20 years old. I started working for Villanova University on the grounds crew, and there I started dealing with. Up until then, I'd just been like a rich college kid who did recreational drugs like acid and smoked weed and drank beer and did whatever he could get his hands on. Did coke once in a while. I'd never been around like real addiction, and there was people at this job who were like professional alcoholics. I mean, you would see them walking around with coffee cups in the morning. These guys who ran the tractors and stuff at Villanova, and they had blackberry brandy in there. And I worked with a guy on one crew who had like a cooler of beer on his truck all day, and he drank all day, and he smoked weed all day. And then sometimes it would snow, and then everybody would bring in drugs, and people would bring in different drugs, and I ended up going in on some meth, and that was the first time I ever did meth, and I hated it. I mean, I liked it in the beginning, but it kept me up for like 4 days, and I remember just like I just thought of it as this awful drug that kept you up for 4 days. So that would turn out to be like I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, I got off on a bit of a tangent there. Moral of the story is, why do you want to quit? I think that I just read an audiobook in the great courses, or I listened to an audiobook about addiction, like the latest addiction science. And I guess it affects it affects your reward system, your dopamine system, and all those systems evolved for your survival. So you could associate something that was good for your well-being with a dopamine hit, so you could remember, like if you found some good tasting, some high calorie fruit or something, you would get a shot of dopamine, and it would reward that behavior, so you'd remember it. So it's your dopamine system is designed to reward you for things that help your survival. But when you take drugs, you're getting your dopamine from just taking this drug, and then you don't have to do anything. So, which is, when I looked at during the pandemic, when I kind of took an audit of my life, I went through all my computers, all my old diaries, and I just realized that like all the critical points of decision in my life are where I could have done things. My music. I wanted to have a music career. Like, why didn't that happen? And there was certain points of where I could have done things that I didn't, and it was mostly, if it wasn't directly because of drugs, it was because of it was related to that. But anyway, I think that it definitely does something that impairs your executive functions. Like it it impairs your ability to make long range plans. It just I'm just thinking that I've already tried so many things to the road to self improvement. I've tried so many things to and everything's failed. I just feel like I failed at everything. Everything I've tried to do to make things better has failed, and I'm basically a nobody, nowhere loser working for minimum wage and some menial jobs, and uh, I'm just gonna try to just straighten out and just see what that does. I'm not gonna try to do anything else. I'm just gonna try to straighten out and see what happens. Maybe nothing will happen. I mean, maybe. And I'm already 58 years old, man. It's like I feel like it's just too late. Uh, sometimes I get it just seems like your capacities diminish with age. Like you go through life, you think that you have these experiences, and you think that they're going to make you better, that they're going to change you, that you're going to know stuff that younger people don't know, and that's going to give you some advantage. But it turns out it seems like it's not really true. It's like, you get experience, but your experience is not relevant. And the older you get, the more irrelevant it becomes until finally it's not relevant at all. You're just some old guy babbling about some shit that nobody cares about. Um, uh, why do you want to quit Kratom? Bro, I'm asking myself the very same question right now. I've been off this shit. I had my little relapses. Now I've been going pretty good for like a week. But somebody else asked me why I don't go AA or NA. Well, I don't really have a good answer for that. Tried it a couple times. Last time it didn't make a very. I thought it was one of those things where you get up and say, "Hi, I'm Rob. I'm a recovering drug addict, and I used to do this, and it's like, oh no, you can't say that, man. Like you might trigger somebody's impulses, or like you couldn't talk about drugs." And I was like, well, isn't this the point of the whole exercise? They drew little popsicle sticks with sayings of people on them. Like one of them was Winston Churchill, and I was like, man, Winston Churchill was the biggest alcoholic that ever lived. Smoking their cigarettes and yada yada yada, but nobody was talking about drug addiction. They were all talking about the alcoholics in their life. And at that time, my brother was an alcoholic, living on the couch, like getting up and throwing up in the morning. So drunk Susie Q, my stepdaughter, woke up dead on the couch. Like everybody, like that seemed to be like a common way for alcoholics to go, was like dead on the couch. So that wasn't really what I wanted to hear at the time. Um, I wasn't seriously strung out at the time when I went to that. I had a little dilaudid habit, but it wasn't like the kind of strung out you get when you're like injecting drugs. I mean, when you're injecting drugs, I mean you're in a totally different ballpark than someone who's just taking too many pills. Well, like you want to know why Elvis in 1973 to 75, why he graduated into something. I think it was IV drugs. I think he got introduced to them in about 1973, and they gradually got him. He was on like a 4-year trajectory. They took him. Um, but I mean, anybody who had access to those kind of drugs, I mean, you were going to be in big trouble. I mean, if you had access to like high-powered opioids like Dilaudid and Demerol. I mean, they gave me Demerol in the hospital when I got my stomach operation. This was back in like 1989, and I was getting Demerol like every 3 hours. Like I was getting a 100 milligram shot, and each one of these Demerol shots would just put me under for like 2 hours. I would just be. Then I would wake up and be like in a twilight, and then it was time for another shot. And then the day came when they cut off the shots, and it was like, oh, holy shit, like, it's time for my shot. They're like, sorry. And then Nurse Ratchet came in, like, stripped the curtains off the wall. The sun comes pouring in. And she's like, no, there's no more shots. And then it all starts to wear off. Then you realize, like, what they've done to you. And they start giving you, they gave me two Percocets, which was like 5 milligrams of oxycodone. So it was 10 milligrams of oxycodone every 4 hours for the rest of the time I was in there. And then when I got out, they gave me 50 Tylenol 3s, which I was eating about 2 at a time. I'm thinking about going back to Kratom. I mean, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think life without Kratom is really worth it. I don't know. Plus, I mean, if I went to NA, I'd have to like give up my marijuana addiction. What are they going to say about my dependence on antidepressants and sleeping meds and other benzos that I shouldn't be taking, but do? I mean, it's not going to go well. I'd have to be capable of a total different level of commitment. I'm just trying to stay off the Kratom. I'm trying to stay off the opioids for right now. The rest of them I'll dismantle piece by piece, but I'm not in a position. I'm not in a position where I can make changes that radical that'll disrupt my functioning on a day-to-day basis. So there's that.